week ago. Got Ironman Chattanooga 2022 done in the books. So in this video we're going to go over how it went for me personally, dive into my data a little bit, show you that information, and then I want to talk a little bit about the race itself and kind of review the highlights, lowlights, what I think might be improved or something like that. Sent out the survey last week for Ironman, and I filled it out and have my little information in there. So stay tuned. Do I totally tear it apart, or was it the best race ever? Or somewhere in between. So that'll be later in the video. But let's jump into it. I want to get you caught up. This is my, I'm Ryan, setthepacetriathlon.com. So if you want to check that out, you can. And this would be my fourth time doing Ironman Chattanooga. I did in 2014, 2018 when the swim was canceled. 2019 was about 100 degrees. 2018 was pretty warm too. It was in the upper 80s. I think the heat index got in the 90s, so it was pretty toasty. And then this year, 2022, it got probably in the low 80s for the high, so really not horrible. But there are some stark differences, so we're going to jump right into my experience in the race here. I'll just pull up my Garmin Connect info. So take it with a grain of salt. You know, sometimes GPS, it shows 144.17 instead of 144.6. Keep in mind there's 4 extra miles on a bike course for Ironman Chattanooga, so it's 116, not 112. So there's a little bit of variance. My watch was consistently behind in tracking the breaking points or the stop points for every 10 miles on the bike course. I was kind of constantly behind. Every mile on the run course they had signs and markers. So my GPS was off. I mean, it could be a GPS miscalculation, or it could be that I took a different line on the course than when they marked it. Who knows? At the end of the day, you have to go with what they put out there and run it. So whatever your Garmin says at the end of the day is whatever it says, and it may not match up entirely accurate. So over 144.6 miles, probably enough variability and difference in the calculations, because GPS is not wholly entirely accurate down to like the millimeter. So it's off. Last I read, it's plus or minus 3 feet at times. So there's a little bit of variance. So don't get caught up in the numbers as far as the distance goes and speeds and all that kind of stuff. Generally, overall, average speeds, average heart rates, power, and all that good stuff should be fairly accurate. But sometimes that instantaneous information just isn't going to necessarily match up to reality and what's really going on just because of GPS inaccuracy. So we're going to dive into it. So Chattanooga, Ironman Chattanooga, like I said, the 4th time doing this race. This one was a little bit different. We had weather. This is the first time that we had rain quite a bit on the bike course. I'll talk about that a little bit. Then the sun broke for when I was on the run course. Got a little bit toasty out there. Dehydration, a little bit of an issue. But overall, much better conditions. 2014 was perfect. It was in the 70s. A little bit of rain on the run course. Bike course was totally dry. Totally good situation. Like I said, 2018, they had a lot of rain and the river was up over Ross's Landing. So they canceled the swim because they didn't have a safe swim exit and the water wasn't safe to be swimming in. And then 2019 was about 100 degrees. So this year, no significant rainwater. The temperatures weren't just hot and crazy. It was nice and warm. We had pretty much good setup minus the rain, but what are you going to do about that? This is the 3rd I've done Ironman Tulsa. Basically rained the entire bike course. 7.3 Memphis. Basically last year rained the entire time. It was a monsoon on the bike. This year I heard it was pretty good. So keep that in mind. This is probably one of the more favorable weather conditions for this race. So you might kind of notice, we're going to jump right into the swim. This by no means is my standard swim time of 47 minutes and 32 seconds. So we had wetsuit legal swim. I believe it was around 75 degrees for the water temperature. So it was a degree below the breaking point, but I wore a full sleeve wetsuit, my Xterra, did great, did not overheat, had a great swim time. The only problem is I changed my watch around, so when I'm on the bike I can read it, so I don't have to mess with it in transition. And it started catching on my wetsuit and kind of rubbing me a little bit raw, so I actually had to kind of glide for a minute, reach out with the other hand, and kind of switch my watch around so I didn't get chafing and have to deal with that the entire race. So there was one point like that, but see, point-to-point swim, start, swim down river. So you had downriver current, and it was a decent current. It was flowing pretty decent, and wetsuit legal. So I decided to put a little bit of extra effort into it to try to get a sub 50. 2014 I did in 56 minutes. 2019 I think it was around, I was under an hour. So I knew I could do a pretty good time without the current, without a wetsuit, because this is the first time that I've done it that's been wetsuit legal. But I decided to put a little bit extra effort into it, just to make sure I get sub 50, because probably never going to see this kind of setup again. Downriver swim, strong current, wetsuit legal. You'd be hard pressed to find a good situation like that. So put a little extra into it, and it paid off when I jumped out of the water in 47 minutes and 33 seconds. Like I said, that is nowhere near my normal swim times. I can see a 112, 115 minute per 100 in the pool if I'm doing sprints, and that's in the first couple sets before I start gassing out. Other than that, I'm not out there throwing down 110s and 115s in the pool on a normal basis. So this by far was one of my best swims. Like I said, I think my best one was 56 minutes in 2014 Ironman Chattanooga. So this blew this out of the water. So it set the mark rather high. So if I never do Ironman Chattanooga again and don't do a downriver swim wetsuit legal, probably will never approach this time again unless I'm spending 50,000, 60,000 meters in a pool a week and building up that swim speed. Ain't gonna happen. So enjoy that. You're not gonna get that every year. You are gonna get a downriver swim. I've used speed suits in the past, and like I said, I've gotten like 56 minutes. So, I mean, it's a 9-minute improvement, so it kind of helps over 2.4 miles. But in the end of the day, I think everybody, and there's people did more wetsuits, and everybody made it under an hour and 30 minutes is what I heard as far as chip times. I do not believe there was anybody who got pulled on the swim, and everybody with a chip time ended up with below an hour and 30 minutes, and it's a 2 hour and 20 minute cutoff. So, I think a very successful. However, if they had any doing orchestrating a swim like that, Ironman should be applauded. But I doubt that they had any. They loved it probably, but got everybody in, everybody out, safe, no problems, and it was a great swim. So, I mean, really, there's nothing. If you want to do Ironman Chattanooga, I think it's a popular race because of the downriver swim, so it really helps you out on the swim. But just keep in mind that wetsuit legal does not happen on a consistent basis. Everything just came out just right. It was probably in the 40s and 50s in the morning, so it cooled it just enough, and they found the right spot to get that temperature that was wetsuit legal. So, as you can see, I'm doing 110s, 104s, 114s. I'm kind of slowing down a little bit, 107, 104. This might have been the little spot where I had to adjust my watch and kind of slow down just for a minute, and then you swam through. So my average heart rate was 149. So take that again with a grain of salt. I flip my watch around so it's reading the inside of my wrist, and I flip it around again, it's reading the outside. So, there could have been some instances, 160 beats per minute, that's pretty, I never felt like I was going super intense, and for me, 160 is working pretty hard on the run. So, I don't know if I would wholly believe in that. Maybe the second half here looks a little bit more accurate. So again, if you got that wrist heart rate, if you're wearing a heart rate strap, that's the tri ones that measure in the water and then downloads to your watch later. That might be a little bit more accurate if you're looking for that information, but I definitely would not put a whole lot of hope in that average heart rate being completely and totally accurate. So as you can see, temperatures, minimum 77, max 87.8, average is 78.8. Again, water temperature is supposedly measured at 75 degrees, so it's on your body, and your body temperature is a little bit warmer, especially if you're wearing a wetsuit. So again, take that with a grain of salt as far as the temperature goes. But again, it was a great swim for me personally. I think all along the course they had kayaks, they had the little pads if you had to pull over. I did run into a buoy, didn't sight it quick enough. It came up on me pretty quick and thought I was good and turned up and smacked it with my hand, so that was kind of interesting. But all the support, the swim start was great, had tons of porta potties, tons of buses to get everybody in there in time, tons of support as far as volunteers, they had water everywhere, tons of information, announcements. I think they've done this for 8 years now, and it was completely seamless as far as getting everybody there and into the water and going. You walk out on the dock, there's a little timing match, you step on it, a few seconds, it beeps, and you jump in. So they let us about 3 at a time, step on the match, jump off the dock, start swimming. I did think it was funny, I saw a video of the first people jumping in. They clearly say, do not dive in head first, and was the first guy to do dive in head first. So, please listen to the race directors, and because he was wearing a bright yellow suit, so if they really wanted to, they could probably DQ him and kick him out of the race. So keep that in mind. But always listen to the race staff. And try to be as respectful and mindful as possible. That'd be my recommendation. But like I said, I mean, even at the swim exit when you come out some steps, and it's a little bit tricky because you can't see the bottom of the stairs. So they've got tons of volunteers. They're all grabbing you. So you just got to be careful that they don't just pull you up on the stairs. And then there's handrails, there's steps, like I said, to walk up. And once you hop out of there, you have your little transition. You run along the Riverwalk sidewalk. They have a ramp that they put over the stairs, so you don't have to run the stairs. They have wetsuit strippers over here. I opted not to. I can take mine off pretty easily. I'm not really worried about it. You come out, you get your bag, and you head into the transition tent. You do what you need to, change out there. Did a little quick porta potty stop because I needed to, and so that tacked on a little bit of time for me personally. But I'd rather do that than be on the bike course and be uncomfortable and have to stop somewhere on the bike course. So got it done, got on the bike, and then hit the road. It was pretty seamless, pretty smooth. Everything's laid out. The volunteers are all there pointing you in the right directions. They had sunscreen if you needed it. Again, really seamless from swim to bike. Really no problems. Nothing that is glaring to me. The volunteers are great in the tent. They're all attentive and trying to make sure every athlete's got what they need. Helping them out if they're confused or something's going on, or if they're stressed out. Trying to do everything they can. Picking up the bags, all that kind of good stuff. Top-notch volunteers all the way around. Really, there's nothing, like I said, that I would glaringly say they could improve this or whatever in the transition. They've done this for years. It went smooth. You run through, you get your bags, you go to the tent, you change, you get your bike. And you have to go to the bike rack and get your bike yourself in this race and then take it to the start. So I opted to wear my shoes the entire time. Some people carried them and put them on. You could have put them on your bike and then jumped on your bike with your shoes already on. That might have been a little bit of a better option for myself. I've tried that a few times. I feel fairly confident in that. So that would have saved me having to run across in my bike shoes, but then you run in your socks, you get rocks on them, all kinds of stuff. So there's things to consider if you want to. You have options. You can put your bike shoes on your bike and then mount the transition line and then put your shoes on later. There's plenty of runoff space here when you start the bike. You're not immediately uphill or anything. There's plenty of space out from other riders to get your shoes on. Or you could put your shoes on in transition and run the entire transition course. Or you could just carry your shoes with you and grab your bike and then take it to the mountain line, put your shoes on, lean your bike up against the dividers, the gates that keep the transition sectioned off from everybody. Put your shoes on and grab your bike and go. So whatever you wanted to do, it's paved, it's a parking lot, and they swept it pretty good. I didn't have any problems with rocks or anything like that. So tons of options, whatever you want to do, whatever you feel most comfortable with. So we're going to jump right into the bike ride. So at this point, I think it did rain on me a little bit during the swim. I could have swore I saw raindrops as I was swimming along. When I got out of the water, there was no rain whatsoever that I noticed. Basically, I made it the first, I made it out of town almost short of the first loop, so probably like the first 10 miles. It was great. There was very little headwind. I was just head down, trying to keep that speed up, trying to use momentum. Once I got out of town, when you're going through town to try to get to the country roads, the roads could use some help. I'll just put it like that. They patch all the potholes and stuff, but there's cracks, there's uneven surfaces. It is not the most comfortable of bike rides, but it is what it is. There's just some sections that are just rough. So you're just going to have to live with that to get out to the country roads. But the country roads are great. They have repaved a lot of it. I would say once you get out there, there's probably 80-85% of all those roads that have been repaved. It's nice. It's smooth as glass. There are some sections a little rough. They've repaved them within the past couple of years, but they started cracking again, so it's a little rough riding in some sections. But overall, the roads were really smooth. They'll probably last another 1 to 2 years before they start cracking and spalling again. But hey, this year I decided they paved that main section. Once you get out of town and you're kind of in the country roads, I put my head down and I was just trying to use my ability to get some speed going, momentum, especially it looked like coming up into the kind of foothills of the base of these little mountains here. You can see the rain coming, you can see the rain clouds, the wind was starting to pick up a little bit, so I was just trying to get as much speed in there as I could before weather hit, and sure enough, around 10 miles, it started with a few wind gusts, some sprinkles. At times it was just kind of a steady rain. At other times, especially hitting this turn a few times, it seemed like it would come up over the little mountains there and just kind of whoosh right into the valleys and stuff. there are some pretty wicked headwinds at times. I got rained on pretty hard a few times, but it was just off and on. It wasn't the entire bike ride, thankfully, but I would say about 75, 80 miles of this ride, I was in the rain. So coming out, doing the first loop, I got rained on, and I hit the turn. And on the back loop, it's funny, it was like a totally different section of weather. It just finished raining there, so the pavement was still wet, but it was not raining. So I took advantage and tried to hammer as best I could. So when you're looking at here, you're seeing 22 miles an hour. I head down, arrow as possible. It is kind of a downhill little section, so I was just trying to take as much advantage of that as possible. When you go into Chickamauga, I did stop at special needs. You get there, the first volunteer, you yell your number out, you want your special needs, you pull in, they get it for you, they grab your trash, and you're off and running again. It's really nice, Chickamauga. They've repaved little roads through there, so it's really smooth. Just got to watch out for a few manhole covers and stuff, but tons of cheering people. They've got the buses for the spectators, brings them out there so they can cheer you through, really yell and scream at you, and it's really uplifting for when you hit the special needs on the first loop. You pass that 2 times, so you don't have to get on the first loop, but then you come on the second loop and you're well into the bike ride. So if you need any special needs at that point, you're kind of hosed because you're on this back loop. And you got aid stations, but if you need any special needs, you need to get on the first loop at about mile 56. So overall, the course, with the repaving and everything, had it not rained, I think I could have done a little bit better on speed. There's the little downhill section, so you do a little climb here outside of Chickamauga, and there's a nice downhill section before you turn back and do your second loop. It started raining on me pretty good at that point, so I had no interest in veering off the road, putting my bike down, having wheels slide out from underneath me. Especially, it was a little bit bumpy in that section. They tried to mark as much as they could with spray paint, but it was really dicey, and I didn't feel like personally taking any risks at that point. I'm not going to be qualifying for age group spots, not qualifying for Kona other than Legacy, so I need to finish the race. So I kind of rode the brakes through that. So if you're behind me and you got frustrated, I was going a little bit slower and riding my brakes, I don't know what to tell you. I wanted to make sure that I was staying safe. The other tricky part is this little turn here at Hogjow Road, I believe. See if we can pull that. So Hogjow Road. So this right here is a hairpin turn. So man, I came down to a crawl because they got cones there. There is no way to take that with any speed, and I would highly recommend not even trying it. Just take your time, get around the cones, you get a nice little downhill to get your speed back, and then you're off and running. So definitely, it has its tricky points, but overall, the bike course for IRONMAN Chattanooga, I like it. It suits me. I just wish it didn't rain personally. I could have been a little bit more aggressive on the bike had it not rained. I actually felt pretty good, which is nice for a race for a change. Did my got in what I needed to outdoors. To do my long bike rides, and made this much more doable, much more enjoyable, much more comfortable by the end. And please ignore my dogs and the fighting in the background because that's what they do. So basically for the bike course, as far as, that's my personal recap of it. For me, this is, it's pretty much in the middle of the 4 races that I've done out there as far as speed goes. Again, I think I could have done a little bit better had it not rained on me, but again, I was a little bit conservative. But I came in with tons of energy and firepower left to do the run, which is my target because this is a very tough run. Overall, the aid station is great. Support was great. I got water bottles without a problem. I got food without a problem. The support from like sheriffs and local police. Intersections were good. I did not have problems personally with traffic. There's some cars on the road, but really nobody that was a jerk about it. Nobody that was rude. Nobody, sometimes in the past we've had problems out there with people just not appreciating us being out there. And I understand that. There are some roads that are just 2-lane little roads. But overall, it went as smooth as possible, especially with the rain and the wind. I did get a little bit chilly. I bought some socks and cut the holes out of the ends, but when I started out of transition, it was like 25% chance of rain when I looked last that morning. Didn't think I was going to need them. Left them in transition bag. Wish I had them later in the race, but I survived. And it was just a few sections while it was still raining on the back loop the second time. Got a little bit chilly, a little bit cold. Let's see what the temperature says. Performance conditions, position, power, balance, temperatures. So yeah, I mean, we're looking at like 68 degrees Fahrenheit. So for me, that was a little chilly, especially if you're going 20 miles per hour average, because that was kind of the downhill section. And then it stopped raining right at the second time we passed through Chickamauga, the special needs. And then it kind of warmed up, so it made it kind of nice and favorable to ride back into town and try to get as much speed as possible with a little bit of a tailwind coming back into town. So like I said, overall, it took me 6 hours and 13 minutes, 18.5 miles per hour average. Let's see what the elevation, total ascent was about 5,600 feet. Let's put that's what IRONMAN.com has listed, because everybody's always, oh, this is list that and this and the other. So they listed, let's see here. See that on the screen? Sorry, my thing's in the way. A little bit here. So gain of 4,800 feet. So it's always interesting. It says 4,800 feet here. You look at, for me, I got 5,600. So again, this is where you got to kind of take the GPS with a grain of salt. I would definitely use their information as the most accurate information as far as the elevation goes. I mean, I can look back at different races I've done, and sometimes I'll be at 6,000 feet, sometimes I'll be at 4,800. It just, as far as your GPS goes, I mean, I wouldn't totally trust every bit of it, because like I said, a plus or minus 3 feet over 160 miles could kind of add up over time. So just keep that in mind. But like I said, overall, support was great. The course was pretty good. Biking through town, I do wish, especially in this little area here, I wish that they would go back and do maybe a little bit of paving on those little sections, because the roads are pretty rough. So, but again, you're in town, you're in the small little roads. They do close those off for traffic, so you don't have to worry about cars. But it would be nice if they would maybe like look at repaving. If we had any say in the matter, it would be nice if they repaved a little bit, because it'd be a little bit safer, a little less bumpy, and there's some train tracks and other stuff to have to worry about. So when you're going through town, you're really not you kind of negated any opportunities for catching a little bit of speed. Once you come back in the transition, there's a few little sections where you can kind of put your head down, try to get a little speed back. But overall, once you get through town, you're kind of done. You're kind of toast. So, rolling back into transition. Again, you come into the finish line here. I opted to keep my shoes on, dismount your bike, give it to a volunteer, and I took my shoes off to run through transition. And they rack your bike, so you just run through, you grab your bags, you go into a transition tent, come back, drop your bike off to the bike handlers. I took my shoes off, carried them through transition, grabbed my bag, and headed to the transition tent, where I took my time in changing. Again, the transition tents, it's a tent, it's on pavement, and they had tons of chairs that you could sit in. Pretty much T1, T2 for me, I didn't have that many people, so I was able to put stuff on the chair next to me. Plenty of space to spread your stuff out. Brought my stuff on the ground. Took my time to make sure I had everything that I wanted. Make sure that I went through everything, because that's kind of the catch where I've been in the past, where if you're in such a hurry, you get through, you start to run, you're like, oh, I forgot this, that, and the other, because I didn't go through everything on my bag. I had my shoes, I had my bib, I had my hat, sunglasses if I needed them, and then I'm like, oh yeah, well, I forgot this, I forgot my nutrition, I forgot my gels or whatever. You can get on the run course, so it's not that big of a deal, but keep in mind, take your time in transition. Obviously, my transition times, I mean, that's up to 21 minutes. If I would have shaved 13 minutes out of that, then I would have been sub 12, but really, at the end of the day, it may not have been worth hurrying through and forgetting one of the things I needed. Either, I do a leave just to make sure that everything's feeling okay. I do some like Tums chews just to make sure the stomach's going to be doing okay. So if I'd have gone through and been in a hurry and forgot this stuff, it would have made it maybe a little bit more miserable on the run, and the time I saved in transition would have been added to the run course because it just took me longer. So overall, like I said, as far as rating, like the race and the event, the volunteers are great. They grabbed my bike, they put it in racks. I got in there, the volunteers in the tent, they're all attentive. They're checking on every athlete. They're walking around, making sure everybody's all set. more than likely, a few of them look like they've, either been Ironman, they've done Ironman races before, they competed in them, or they volunteered before. I think they take a lot of pride in volunteering if that's what they do for the race, even if they don't race Ironman races. I think they take a lot of pride in making sure that this event is run well, so it definitely shows. They're definitely attentive, making sure you got everything, making sure they got your bag, not trying to hurry you through, not trying to rush you through, not doing goofy things like stealing your stuff before you're done with it or anything like that. And if you didn't need help and you say, no, I'm good, they'll leave you alone unless you come over and you're like, hey, I need help with this, that, and the other. So as far as the transition and the tents go, really, it was a perfect experience. Got my stuff, got changed, got for the run. Um, so you head out of transition, and I had to turn around real quick and go get some sunscreen because I kind of forgot about that. Because at this point in time, basically the last 10 miles of the bike, it quit raining, the sun came out, and it didn't get necessarily hot, but it did get a little bit humid, a little bit stickier than I would have preferred necessarily, but it wasn't anything near 2019, 2018. It was a little bit warmer like 2014 when I've done it. So the first loop, I was able to put a little bit of energy out there before really dehydration started really kicking in and being a problem. Personally, for me, I can't take in a super huge amounts of fluids and nutrition or anything. So the first loop, I was able to keep a decent pace coming out because this back road here, when you're out on Riverside Drive and you're running on the road, they close down a lane. They have traffic next to you, but they cone off an entire lane. So when you're coming through and you're running, you're pretty exposed to the elements. You can run a little bit on the curb. In some sections, you have some trees to shade you. But for the most part, you're kind of out there in the elements, especially in this last little section before you turn, before the little fast food joint, and then you hit the river trails, and then you got trees in there, and you got shade and some other things to give you a little bit of cover from the elements. But for me, going through the run, wearing my A6 Meta Racers, and I'll do a review on those because it's about time to retire them. I've done a few Ironman races on them and 70.3s and some other races, so a little bit of time to retire those guys. So you can see I was doing pretty good until about this point in the run where it became obvious to me. I started feeling a little bit lightheaded, a little bit crampy, and before things really started going downhill, I decided to do a little bit more walking, being hydrated, really hydrated, 8 stations, taking on at least 2 cups of either water, Gatorade, or whatever. At that point in time, I think I was working Red Bull too. So then I opted to go kind of in the dog running mode because my 2-year-old German Shepherd I just had to put away earlier because he was being obnoxious while I was trying to do this video. What we do is we kind of do a walk jog because he's not the best of runners. He's not the most athletic of German Shepherds. So we run for maybe a quarter of a mile, and then we walk for a little bit, and then we run for a quarter of a mile. If he's feeling good, maybe we run a mile or something like that. So it was kind of the walk-run method. So just trying to not take too long of breaks walking to draw out the time. So really at this point in the race is where it kind of took a point where I knew starting the second loop, having that sun on me, full sun, it was probably, let's see what the temperatures say. I mean, it was 86, so it wasn't horrible. I mean, it started creeping up there, 86, 87, 86. I mean, and like I said, take it with a grain of salt. This is on GPS from the watch. It's on your skin. It's measuring the temperatures. So at this point in time, I was getting a little bit warm, a little bit dehydrated, and I knew it was better for me personally to start doing some run walk and really get the fluids in, especially having to do that second loop going through Barton Hill and all this section right here that is nothing but fun and climbs and hills and all kinds of fun stuff. So I knew I wanted to be able to go and finish this strong, so having a run-walk method to get me there I think was the best idea because at that point in time, had I not done that, I guarantee this would have been over 5 hours for a marathon. It would have been a struggle bus and not very fun. As far as elevation goes, 1,200 feet of elevation gain according to my Garmin. Let's see what the run says on the website as far as elevation goes. See if you can see that. Move my little thing here. So a gain of 1,150 feet. So actually it's pretty close for the run. So 1,150 for the website for Ironman and 1200 per my watch. So that's actually fairly accurate. But overall, like I said, this is the fourth time I've done this race. Probably the second best conditions for the race. I was able to get a good, decent, and my stomach actually cooperated, which when it gets warm, it becomes a problem with my stomach and dehydrated and all kinds of fun stuff. So at this point in time, this is where I need to kind of draw it back a little bit, do a run-walk method, make sure I get back down to normal, to a good baseline to get hydrated to be able to finish strong. And I wanted to, at least on the uphills and stuff, be able to run, a couple cones at a time, then walk for a little bit, run a couple cones at a time. So I wasn't totally walking all the uphills. That was one of my goals too. So getting through that, my leg strength, I think, was in a good spot, but dehydration kind of caught up with me. So, give or take, it had its pluses and its minuses, but overall, the run course, it's great conditions. I mean, you're running on the main road here, and they cone off a little section. You're kind of in the shoulder, kind of by trees here, and then you're running on a paved trail system through town, and then you're running Barton Hills, so you're on the road for a little bit. And really, there's no sections of pavement that are like super horrible. The only some of these sections here, the road is like super sloped for rain and stuff like that to get it to the curbs. So I kind of ran a little bit to the middle of, as far as I could, to the middle of wherever the cones were or whatever, to make sure that I was not, it felt like I was lopsided, kind of leaning towards into the ditch or something like that. So I wanted to be a little bit more even, so that way I wasn't being eccentric about how I was doing my running, and one leg was like reaching and stressing out one ankle more than the other or something like that. Other than that, as far as conditions go, you do have to be careful going over the bridges. Like this main bridge here, Veterans Bridge, it's not as much of a problem. It's a paved bridge. They cone off a road or a lane of the road, and you get also the shoulder, so it's concrete. It's not a problem. But the bridge here, when you're going over Walnut Street Bridge, it is a pedestrian bridge only, and it has wooden planks. And over time, I mean, the wood is just kind of deteriorated. So there are sections, if you're not careful, you can catch yourself and trip. I've never seen anybody do it. Don't want to see anybody do it. But you just got to pay attention. You can't just like lollygag across this bridge and be okay, even if you're walking it. You got to be careful. You got to make sure you're picking up your feet, because it is a little bit of a tripping hazard. Maybe that's part of the mystique and the lure of it all, but and there's not really much. I don't know if they have any kind of plans to go back and replace planks. It looks like they've all been there for a while, so it is what it is. So be mindful of that. Would be one thing that I would say about the course and the actual surface conditions. But once you get across a bridge, like everybody is like a huge party once you get across Walnut Street Bridge. So if you're making your second loop, it actually kind of funneled a little bit too tight. So if there's multiple athletes trying to run through, it becomes a little bit of a cluster. So you're just going to be mindful that you don't run into people, you don't run into kids running across the path, because it's just kind of an open paved area that's open to traffic like normally, and people park up there for stuff for like a restaurant and a valet situation. But it's kind of a pedestrian area. It's kind of a weird quasi mix of stuff, but it is packed with people for the race, because people see them go through twice, and this is the turnaround and special needs in areas, stuff like that. So once you head through here and you're heading to the finish line, you just got to be mindful. There's people everywhere. There's kids running everywhere. The last thing you want to be doing is kind of running through, and you're at a good pace, and you're kind of in the zone, and some kid runs out and wipes you out, and you face plant or something like that on the concrete. So just be careful of that. It's a little bit crowded. But once you get to the finish line, it's a nice downhill all the way to the finish line. Make sure that you try to enjoy as much as possible. I know at that point, I'm just ready to be done. So I didn't sprint it or anything like that. I just kind of jogged it in, kind of checking out, see if I knew anybody at the finish line, and then did the finish. So basically, that's kind of it in a nutshell as far as my race goes. Again, as far as times goes, I ended up with like a 12:13, which is probably my second best Ironman time, behind Ironman Chattanooga in 2014. I think it was like 11:40 something. So this course has been good to me in the right conditions. It's been good to a lot of people. I think a lot of people had a good race. Really, I think the rain kind of messed a few people up, especially there's some people on the side of the road looked a little bit hypothermic, unfortunately, and maybe they had a little spill and they're kind of on one side of the road. So I think the rain on the bike ride kind of threw some people off, but other than that, I mean, it was really superb conditions for this race. The things, if we're looking at the race overall, that's my personal recap of kind of how it went for me. And this would be my 11th Ironman race. 12th start. I had DNF Ironman Texas in 2014, but I did Chattanooga 2014 after that, a couple months later, and that's my PR race. So um, take it with a grain of salt that one race is not going to predict the future of all your other races. But what I also like to do is give a little bit of feedback about the course overall. So I will say the town, if you're staying kind of downtown in the Chattanooga area around Ross's Landing, the vibe is really good. They have tons of restaurants, tons of things to do. They have a little grocery store that I went to that I stayed at the Beau Hotel, which is like 0.85-mile walk to transition area in the morning. So it was a great location. Parked my car, didn't have to walk anywhere. Everybody was pretty accommodating. Everybody, I think, was pretty excited to have Ironman there, especially for, I think, ninth year, but 8 races total because of the whole pandemic thing in 2020. So everybody's really excited to have us there. Once you get outside of town, it's a little less of a deal. But once you're inside there in town in Ross's Landing near downtown, it's kind of a bigger deal. So everybody's really excited, really supportive to have you there. The volunteers are great. I don't think that there is any situation where I looked around and was like, oh man, they need more volunteers. I don't, this isn't staffed up enough. They're all great. They all had great attitudes. Almost over energetic at times, which is great. I'd rather have that than people just kind of staring at you like, what are you doing here? I need to go home. I've had that before in races. That's not very fun. So that was great. Support was great. I didn't need tech support on the bike. I didn't see too much tech support, but there's plenty of sheriff. There's plenty of Ironman vehicles running around. There's plenty of local police departments involved, controlling intersections. So really nothing to complain about necessarily on that. Now the road condition on the bike, there's some sections that could use some repaving, especially in town there. Some sections out of town, but overall they've repaved a lot of the very questionable sections from 2019, so it was pretty smooth. I was pretty happy with that. Nothing you can do about the weather. If it rains, you just got to ride in the rain, you got to deal with it. Transitions were great. The only real qualm, I guess I'll say, is the post-race food. It's been pizza every year. I mean, I think that's pretty much a staple of Ironman races. It's pizza at the finish line, but I have done Ironman Florida a few times where they've had like tacos, like flour tortilla tacos at the finish line, a little taco bar where you fix your own food. So that's been great. Ironman Tulsa had actual cheeseburgers, hot dogs, and stuff. Unfortunately, in Ironman Des Moines, we had veggie burgers and hot dogs. But this race, basically for athletes at the finish line, it was pizza, and then the staples, potato chips and bananas and other stuff you saw over the race course, which is by that point I didn't want anymore. I did get into the Ironman VIP section, and the food really wasn't appealing to me necessarily. It was like fried chicken, it was some salad stuff, and just some other stuff that I wasn't. I wanted a greasy cheeseburger, and unfortunately I didn't have one. So that'd be. I mean, I think everybody could say that probably about an Ironman race. They wish the finish line food was a little bit different, a little bit better, a little bit unique, or something like that. But hey, I mean, they've got 1,200 people they need to satisfy, so pizza pretty much covers all the bases. But it was also nice in Ironman Chattanooga. They have little Ross's Landing area, and they have a bunch of restaurants there, and they have a Cold Stone that's open till 10 o'clock. So if you finish before 10, I put cash in a Ziploc baggie, carry with me the entire race in one of my pockets. That's the first stop I made before I went and got my gear, got my ice cream, make sure that was all taken care of, and then checked out, got my bike, got my gear. It is a little interesting. They make you get your bike and all your gear, so you're carrying everything, and it's just kind of a hodgepodge mess. So you have to take a minute to like rearrange everything so I can walk it back to my hotel. So it wasn't much of a problem, but overall it's pretty quick, pretty seamless, pretty smooth. They had tons of volunteers. I didn't have to wait very long to get my stuff, so that wasn't much of a problem. Other than that, I did not go to anything the day after because I hit the road and went home. So as far as like the breakfast, the award ceremony, all that kind of stuff, I don't have much to say about that. I didn't go to it. The athlete briefings, I recorded those and posted those. The welcome ceremony, I posted that as well. In the past, they used to have like a dinner and stuff, and it used to be indoors. But now it's at Ross's Landing, and with the weather the way it was perfect. We go out there, and it was interactive, which is kind of fun. Since I was recording with my phone, I couldn't do it, but it was good, interactive. The announcers were great. Overall, personally, I can't think of anything else really other than the finish line food and some of the surface conditions on the bike course. Everything else was pretty much handled to the way that I would expect an Ironman race to be handled. And like I said, I really like, I've come back to Ironman Chattanooga for 4 times for a reason. The area is really great. Like I said, if you're in downtown, you're kind of situated around downtown or the North Shore or something like that, they're really all about this race. They take great pride in it, and they really get pumped up for it. Really support you. Really feel like you're part of it. If you can, stay close to the downtown area and to Ross's Landing, so you're kind of near Ironman Village. You're kind of near the pulse of what's going on. You go to the restaurants. Ironman people everywhere. Once you get outside town, it's a little bit different, but overall, that's my rating of it. Of the races that I've done, like Tulsa, Des Moines, Boulder, Lake Tahoe, and stuff like that. It is one of my, Florida. I like Florida as well, just because it's kind of different than Kansas City. But Chattanooga, it's a 12-hour drive for me, so it's not horrible. Pack my bike, take all my stuff, park my car, walk from everywhere from my hotel. That's the one thing I did change for this year. I found a good, affordable hotel that's pretty close. I could walk everywhere, so that makes a huge difference. You have to mess with parking, you have to mess with all that, and I made it work. It was nice. So I definitely, personally, I would recommend this for either a seasoned Ironman athlete. If this is your first one with downriver swim, it kind of helps. It is a little bit of a challenge. You go to a bike course, not super hard, very doable. The run is challenging, but again, doable as long as you do your training properly. So it's not that big of a deal. So overall, that's my take on Ironman Chattanooga for myself. As far as a recap or review, like I said, I've done 11 of them, started 12. So I've got some experience on other races and other venues, and it's all centrally located. Everything's happening at transition. The only thing you got to leave for is the catch the bus for the swim start. Other than that, everything is there, which is really nice and really handy. So I'm going to wrap up this video. I think I've talked enough about Ironman Chattanooga. So if you got any questions, put them in the comments. Give it a like on Facebook if this helped you. Give it a like on YouTube, subscribe, all that kind of fun stuff if it helped you out to get future videos on other races and everything. So with that, I'm going to wrap up this video, and we'll see you next time. Happy training. See you at the finish line.